RJ brings up, I love that Kimmel acts like this now, even when after Colbert is finally off the air, Kimmel will still be in third. And yes, all of them will be dead behind Greg Gutfeld. Why? Because, well, Greg Gutfeld is entertaining, if only through the factor of mocking the hell out of these people. It's not a good sign if somebody who goes and mocks you endlessly, who is always going on about you and your friends, and yet is always doing better than you in the ratings, is the guy who is making you absolutely crushed. And considering that a guy like Greg Gutfeld is not really that different in his origin from there to now with his politicized talk show compared to Jimmy Kimmel, considering that Kimmel was starting out on The Man Show and Greg Gutfeld was an editor of Stuff magazine, and then at one point you could find a listing for a book called The Divorced Guy's Guide to Dating, written by a Playboy playmate, which includes a quote in the inside cover from our friend Greg Gutfeld when he was still an editor for Stuff magazine. And yet from that origin, he found his way onto Fox News, including a hilarious bit where he interviewed Glenn Danzig, who asked him about, you always do your, albums about goblins and ghosts and horror-related imagery. Or can you ever do an album about puppies or bunnies and all that? And Danzig responded, well, if I really wanted to make a horror record, I make one about the Obama administration. And Gutfeld worked his way up from there to his own show, which is actually the #1 talk show in America. And the fact that you've got this basic cable news late night show with one guy with on his couch with his little legal pad, where I think maybe it's him and comedian Nick DiPaolo are the ones that are doing all the writing, what they're saying. And yet he's able to pummel the major networks with all their resources and all their star fucking has got to be the biggest humiliation, the biggest embarrassment, the biggest belittlement, the biggest act of how you can start in similar places and yet somebody with a fraction of the resources is far more successful than you. That would be the equivalent to me self-publishing my comic Encrypted, starring this little lady right here, Fiona Anderson, and yet within, say, an issue or two, I wind up doing sales figures that would quintuple what Batman or Spider-Man are doing for Marvel or DC. And well, considering how that little comic book industry is in a very similar trajectory of death by 1,000 cuts of social justice dogma instead of entertaining their audience, our guy like Mr. Greg Gutfeld, who went from editor of Stuff magazine to Fox News personality to now on cable news, he's able to do better ratings than network shows, which is especially funny considering I always say that Colbert and Kimmel both were Comedy Central personalities that went to network late night shows, and yet they wound up bringing the basic cable ratings with them. I like to remind you, Colbert was a spinoff from The Daily Show, and The Daily Show always was trailing in ratings to other Comedy Central series, despite the artificially propped up cultural importance of The Daily Show. Yeah, that's why even Mind of Mencia is on record of having done better ratings than The Daily Show, to a point where Mind of Mencia, well, the only show on Comedy Central with higher ratings than it were South Park, okay? And this was back when still there was plausible deniability about South Park being the show where they mock both sides equally. And yet, Greg Gutfeld got his way onto TV through basic cable news. I like to remind you all the time where for the longest time, I looked at Greg Gutfeld and I would look at him and think, he must have been an insurance salesman that wandered his way onto the Fox News studios past security, and they just decided to keep him on the air. Because at least Brian Kilmeade of Fox and Friends was a guy who had a background in broadcasting. He had worked before, including being a correspondent there for the original UFC pay-per-view. So that's why it's hilarious as all hell to see the ABC, network or a sister network of ABC ESPN on their ESPN Plus streaming service has all of the UFC events archived, so you can go on that ABC-related ESPN Plus network and watch Fox and Friends star Brian Kilmeade on that streaming platform as a correspondent for the original UFC pay-per-view. And yet, well, that gets a lot more attention and a lot more positive response than any of the CRT idiots that ESPN keeps on hiring. It keeps on thinking that this is what's going to get them an audience, when no, it isn't. There is a reason why Jimmy Kimmel still is the third best in ratings talk show host out of all of them, behind the little bitch Colbert and the king of late night, the modern Johnny Carson, Greg Gutfeld. If that's not my opinion, I know I'm right. So until then, I want to thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the channel, hit 10,000 subs, become a member today, and shop at my art store with the second link below, where you can buy my art or commission me or support me directly with a donation. Besides that, tomorrow I'll have shorts at 5 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 and 6. I'll have a new video at 6:30, and I'll be live again at 10. So until then, felines, slam it, lick it, suck it, and see you, Space Cowboy.